What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alliance Blog Podcast, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. And, today is a very fun day for me because I really do enjoy just being able to talk wrestling. And, you know, our guest is somebody who I feel like is going to have a wealth of knowledge to share with us today as we talk about the sport, the passion of pro wrestling. And one of the things that our guest is known for is trying to give back to the sport of pro wrestling for like the past 30 years. And a famous quote that I like to live my life by is a rising tide lifts all boats. And that means in every aspect of life, I don't think more is a bad thing. I think more is a positive thing. And well, let's talk to my guest this week, Brutal Bob Evans, who again has been in the sport of professional wrestling. Oh, where there you are, in the sport of professional wrestling for over 30 years, making towns better than what he saw them when he entered into the arena. And welcome to the show, Bob. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. It looks like you're making towns right now.
Yeah. Well, it's when you're self-employed and you're on the move, you're on the hustle, and unfortunately, this weather, we got 3 feet of snow, a record in Massachusetts. So, 37.8 inches.
Wow.
It was I've never seen it like that. There's a very famous blizzard of 1978 when I was just a small boy, and this one blew that away by like 8 or 9 inches. So like blew it away. So it's we're dealing with it though, and everybody's kind of back to work, but a few people are still stuck, which is when old Brutal Bob, the leader of the pack, kind of takes over and fills the gap, and like you said, giving back, and we're trying to help people. And one of the things I do is I'm a medical courier, so we got to make sure our friends in the nursing homes, and somebody's got to do it, and it was me. So yes, sir.
Well, and I know that the weather's
That's where we
bad
are.
out there on the East Coast. I won't tell you what the temperature is out here right now, but I know out on the East Coast. I mean, my friends over at Gotham Wrestling in West Nyack, New York, they had to postpone their show from this past Saturday because the weather was just too bad, or I guess this Tuesday, excuse me. And I know a lot of promotions have had to postpone events because it's just the weather's been so bad. And I know that in the Northeast, especially in the Northeast, it gets cold, and you guys are used to snow. But you just said this is something you haven't seen in all your life, and it baffles me how you guys even survive. Because I live in California. When we have a place that snows, it's in the mountains, but I have to drive like an hour and a half to get there to see the snow. But when I drive an hour and a half away from the snow, it doesn't follow me. That's not the case for you guys.
No, and it's something we live with. I mean, I really love it up here. I'm not complaining. It's just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had 20 inches of snow, and we said, wow, that's a big one. And then to have almost double the amount is crazy, and it's been a struggle for some. We've been fortunate. We didn't lose power, which was great. And just basically kind of bundled up. And last snowstorm 2 3 weeks ago, we actually had our furnace break, so that was tough. So we had a new heating system, so that was something to be grateful for. And and thank God we did. And got the snow blower out, and 3 hours later got the driveway cleared, and then the next day went to my parents' house down the street and got them cleared. And we're doing okay. I mean, it's the reality. And then there was supposedly rumors of another big storm coming, but I guess that's petered out. I guess that's gone out to sea, whatever it does. And now we're thrilled about, because starting to melt.
Uh-oh. We just lost Mr. Bob Evans. I think you guys could hear that we had a bad signal, so hopefully he'll jump back on in just a minute. Pretty cool stuff that he's out there and trying to help people even during the inclement weather. And I think that's him right now, trying to get back on. I think your call dropped. It's it started getting a little robotic when you were speaking, and then it just dropped.
Yeah, there might be some weak points here. So
if you fall off again, just do what you did, and we'll bring you back on. We'll power through it. But first and foremost, I was talking to you just a little bit before we went on the air. You were just in my backyard in Southern California wrestling with Valley Wrestling. What? I just forgot the name of the company. Valley Wrestling. Oh, geez. You're wrestling with my friends, and I can't even remember the name of the promotion. It was Valley Wrestling Connection. Yeah, there it is. Sorry about that. That doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's embarrassing. You were just out here working with Valley Wrestling Connection not too long ago. My guys, Jarrell Diaz and Honest John, both I think the world of both those guys. What about your experience out here in Southern California? I know it's not the first time you've been out here, but first time in a while. What did you think of the company, the group that was there, the talent that was working with you?
Yeah, it was a lot of great, talented people, and what I like going into a fairly new area for me is the fact that I didn't know a lot of people. I think I knew Jarrell and maybe one or two other people. Yeah, and then only one or two other.
We're Bob, I think we're losing you.
I know it's a struggle. Got to get out of these woods, and then I'll be on the highway, and it should be good.
I got like a mile to the highway. As long as it takes. Okay.
Oh yeah, man.
I just I feel again. We'll get back on. We'll edit it in post. No, we won't.
It's going to take it.
Oh man, we're gonna pick up as soon as you get out of the woods. But just talking about Valley Wrestling Connection, they are a relatively new wrestling promotion out here in Southern California. And although this podcast isn't about them, I'll just shed some light on them. They have done a lot of events over the last few years, and they've not been shy about booking names from out of state, especially names that I feel like have value that can bring more eyeballs to the product. Of course, they've booked Brian Kendrick out here. They've booked Mecca Wolf, former NWA World Tag Team Champion, current AAA superstar. They booked EC3 back in 2024 when he was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And one of the things that I like about Valley Wrestling Connection is that they kind of have an old school approach to pro wrestling. And when I spoke to Jarrell about coming about VWC, one of the reasons why they want Brutal Bob Evans there was to help grow their brand, to help not just with his name value, but the fact that Bob Evans will usually help coach some of the talent before shows and during and after the shows, and he'll critique some of their matches. And when Bob gets back on, we'll ask him about his experience there. Of course, as we get through this. And hopefully, Bob's safe out there and everything's going well. We're going to talk to him about, his early days working enhancement matches with the World Wrestling Entertainment. We're going to talk to him about his time with the National Wrestling Alliance, competing for both NWA New England, NWA Liberty States, working with NWA Fusion from back in the day. And, not only was he a regular competitor for these promotions, but he actually won a couple of titles. He was a NWA New England television champion and NWA two-time television champion. He also was an NWA New England tag team champion, held the NECW heavyweight championship. And we'll be talking to Bob about all of that. Again, Sheldon Goldberg, long time ago, had been on the show, and hopefully we could pick pick Brutal Bob's brain on Sheldon Goldberg and everyone else. And I apologize, guys. The inclement weather and the commute that Brutal Bob Evans is on right now, it's not making it very easy to have a coherent conversation. So we're just going to stall a little bit while we wait for Bob to jump back on. But I do want to talk about there is the upcoming event coming up for Bob Evans with the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. I figure we'll go ahead and talk about that momentarily. On March 6th, which is not this weekend, but next weekend, he'll be wrestling with the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators at Rowan University for their wRAHstlemania. And these are always such a fun card. Now, these matches are filmed, and they will be on the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Facebook page or YouTube page. But the matches are filmed specifically for the students of Rowan University, and the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators always has a good card for these events. And of course, they're bringing in Bob Evans for this particular event. But before we talk more about Dog and some of your other accolades, I did want to pick your brain about Valley Wrestling Connection. Before we got dropped, you had mentioned that you knew a few people there, but it was mostly refreshing because you weren't familiar with a lot of the guys. When you come to an event, and I was kind of explaining this, you're not just getting Bob Evans, you're getting somebody who's been in the business for so long and is looking to give back. Do you critique the wrestlers after their matches, or is it like do you do seminars before the show, or how does it work when you come to a town?
Well, actually, when I went to VWC, that was a whole different business model. What I've just introduced is intensive, and what it is I offer them the full package. So I offer them consulting, I offer them I wrestle on the show, and then if they want to do a seminar, they can. I let them keep the money to help offset my cost. And basically, what it is, it's a before and after. So we try to game plan before. Let me know what the show is. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know where you are in your business, where you're headed, what it looks like, all that good stuff. And then we have a conversation about what I should be seeing when I go to the show, what their goals are, because that's important too. How often they run, how they see themselves in a year, how they see themselves in 5 years. And then I go to the show and I kind of take a bunch of notes, mental and physical notes. I wrestle on the show. I take a look at the talent, and obviously I do my thing at the show because I can't not do my Bob thing. We have, I'll be there and I'll help if they need me to help produce a match. I'll produce a match. And obviously if somebody says, hey, can you watch my match? If I have a chance, I do. I really do try to watch everybody's matches if I can. And then we kind of break it down afterwards. And it's usually a really good thing. And there it was a really good thing because I hadn't seen a lot of that talent. And I don't know that scene that well. So it was a good education for me as well. Because, you hear about a few people. I had heard it, a couple of the folks that were there. But really, I didn't know too many folks. So it was great to see everybody, to kind of, get an eye on new talent. If somebody asked me for a recommendation about a promotion, things like that. And it was a lot of fun. I did BWC on the Friday, and then I did RPW on Saturday in Orange. And two different business models, two sets of great people. And I did intensives with both of them. And we did a before and then we did an after, kind of did a wrap up and future plans and where we're going. And that was, to me, that's the most important part, is the after. You do the seminar, which is great, do the seminar for the talent in the room, but basically at the afterwards on those intensives are what is really getting people forward, because like you said, I have a lot of experience, but if we don't share this experience and wisdom is basically just handing it down to people so they don't, so they don't make the same mistakes you do, or at least if they do, you warned them, and they still might make the same mistakes, and then you were right, we shouldn't have done that, and whatnot. So, and it was 2 different promotions, most of the talent was not repeated, which was cool. So I met more friends, and there was I didn't really have anywhere to go on the Sunday, except I went to visit my uncle in San Diego, because I always try to visit him when I can. And basically it was, they were doing promos, and I said, hey, can I come and can I help produce promos? And usually people don't say no when I offer that, no extra charge, that type of thing. It was kind of my gift to them, and what I could do to help out. And people got a lot out of it. So when you're there for the day. So I mean, I try to be all in as best I can. I try to, there was actually Friday when I was at BWC, I was pretty burned out, and I had already had a long talk with the promoter, and then I said, you know what, James, I said, I'm going to go in my car and I'm going to go to sleep for 45 minutes, and because I want to be my best for you tonight. And that's exactly what I did. And I woke up, had something to eat, and I was ready to go, and I went the whole rest of the night. So it was, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was great seeing a lot of new talent, great seeing a lot of new promotions, what they do. Interesting that both companies had the same color scheme, purple, black, and silver. I thought that was interesting. But no, it was great, and I really love doing that. It's what I kind of was meant to do. I come from a family of teachers. Both my parents taught. My mother and father both. My dad taught high school middle school for years. He was like the legendary English teacher that like turned it around for you. And then they both taught college classes. My mom was a librarian, and then my in-laws were both teachers as well. So it's in the family for sure. And my daughter actually wants to become either a preschool or a kindergarten or elementary school teacher. So it's in the blood for sure. So, and I don't think I could teach a subject, but I'm happy to teach this subject, which is wrestling. And now, like I said, now that I've been leaning in, I've really been helping out promotions and promoters and wrestling schools. Like I ran a wrestling school for 10 years, and I've been to over 100 of them. So I can tell you what works, what doesn't work, that kind of thing too. So it's been a ton of consulting and troubleshooting and, fixing and making suggestions, and kind of that's really the next evolution. And, like we talked about 34 years last week or 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And thanks. And I'm 53, so I realized that, I'm still happy to have matches and have a good time, but pretty much I wrestle for fun and I coach for money, and that's kind of like the professional end of it. So, but it's been very rewarding. And this year I'm going to England in the fall, which is exciting.
Nice.
I've done Canada, but I've never done any other foreign country, so that'll be fun. And hopefully that builds onto new stuff. I have some feelers out in Scotland, Italy, Ireland, all that good stuff. And then I have friends that wrestle all over the world, and they've offered to hook me up with things too. It's just a question of schedule. And
sure,
I don't know if I want to be gone for 3 weeks and all that, but I'll go for, England here is basically the same distance flight as flying out to you guys from Massachusetts. So it's about 6-7 hours. Yeah. So it's, but it's, so that should be fun. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking to see if I can, bridge that gap and really make that a bigger relationship in Europe and things like that. So I'm very excited about that.
If you get to Scotland, try to spend an afternoon, an evening, a day in Edinburgh. It's beautiful. I was there last year, and awesome. If I could move anywhere in the world right now, I think Edinburgh, Scotland is where I'd want to live. Getting awesome. Back to the coaching aspect of it, because and I have fun. I have friends who are teachers. You're not. a lot older than me. I'm 47. I have friends who are in the teaching industry. I have friends who are coaches in not in wrestling, but in sports and stuff. And one of the biggest things that you hear about today are kids are very uncoachable. And it's hard to coach kids when and again, I'm not trying to bury anybody, but accountability sometimes gets left behind. Some of the parents choose to, not support the teachers or the coaches, and usually, the children are left kind of in this weird stance where they don't get the kind of coaching that I think they deserve and that they need, and that transfers into adults who simultaneously go through that same thing. And I have a friend who does esports coaching at a high
Mm-hmm.
school. They're literally teaching kids to play video games. You would think, of course, they'd be all in on this, but even then, there's kids who are reluctant to take criticism, to take coaching, and I wonder if that's an obstacle for you in the professional pro wrestling. I don't think it's just here in Southern California, but you often hear about people, younger kids coming up in the industry who don't take criticism well. It famously, recently we heard MJF say, kids who are coming up in wrestling now aren't watching enough wrestling on TV, which I've heard people say that as well. Is it more difficult to coach this generation of talent that's coming up than it was in previous years?
Well, it's a nuanced answer, right? It's not a definite yes or no. I see people's point when they say that maybe we're, the kids, kids these days are, it's difficult. I think pro wrestling's a little bit different. Most of the time, actually, I think pro wrestling's the same as any other business, which I've managed to kind of tell people that the last 10, 15 years, and some people are starting to wake up and actually realize that. Because for years when I started, pro wrestling's such a different business. It's not at all. Same as any business. But with coaching and pro wrestling, it's one of the few sports, in fact, I can't think of any sport, where you walk in day one and you're expected to be a professional. And I don't mean be professional as in gear and of course, but professional. Like there's no baseball where the first day you show up at 6 years old, you go into MLB
That's
and
a
the
great point.
NFL. Right. And I know some people brought that up as far as maybe other industries where there's a couple of industries where that is, and I forget what they are. But pretty much when you start, you're kind of an apprentice. And, I guess you're an apprentice plumber or an intern, you're not going to get paid right away. But
Right.
so you're trying to teach people. What I've learned is I'm teaching. There was somebody who reached out to me with 10 years in wrestling and she said, oh yeah, I understand that you're the guy that helps people do, tells people they can deduct wrestling on their taxes. And I'm like, well, you have to declare yourself a pro wrestler.
Right.
She's like, what do you mean? Well, I said, you don't have to declare, like get on the mountain and yell to God, I'm a pro wrestler, but you have to declare yourself as a sole proprietorship, at least for now. And if you want to do an LLC later, you can. And I said, I'm not a tax professional. I said, you can look this up on ChatGPT. I think that's a start, but I think you should really try to do a little bit more with it and talk to your accountant, whoever does your taxes. You can do it on TurboTax, whatever. But a lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people who should know don't know that. And I don't think we're failing anybody. I just think that, if I had to sit with everybody, and I've also had to learn, this is one of the things they tell you. I have a lot of now, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you where I stand, that
Sure.
I am a student as well. So,
Right.
excuse me, my marketing people are millionaires. I don't say that as in pride of ownership because I don't own them. But the people that mentor me are worth a lot more money than I am. Not
Right.
because I want to be some 10 million trillion dollar guy, but I do want to do better, right? So how do we do better? Well, you have to realize that you can't coach everybody for free. You can't do everything for them, and you have to have standards. Well, standards and systems, right? And boundaries. My issue was I was trying to help everybody too much. I was the other way. So I saw that there was a tremendous need for instruction. The problem was, and now this is being solved more with the online stuff, is I was spending time messaging back and forth with people for an hour, trying to get them to figure out, I've helped like 15 wrestlers book plane tickets because they didn't know how to book plane tickets.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't realize, well, if you've never flown.
Right. No, it's a great point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've, taught them how to rent a car. I taught them how, and this is all stuff that I was like, I knew how to rent a car, but you still had to, we also have to realize that there's a lot of people who didn't grow up with a dad to show them this stuff or a mom to show them this stuff.
For sure.
And I'm not, and this is not a political statement. This is not me saying kids don't have any respect because they weren't, but you have to realize that maybe there wasn't a lot of leadership. And if they're, and now you're telling them to run a business when maybe they've only had minimum wage jobs or retail jobs, or maybe they have a good job, but it's kind of, well, everybody takes care of that. And I just file my W-2 at the end of the year and I'm done. And this is a whole different thing where you have to deal with 1099 sometimes.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So, but that's the whole business end of it. The wrestling part, I've actually found most of the time people are pretty excited to learn new stuff.
Okay.
I think it's an overcorrection in the other way where I think when I started training, they gate kept things. They kept things from you. You'll figure it out. Baptism by fire. Throw them in the lake and they'll learn how to swim. That kind of metaphor, Yeah. And now what happened was we did so much of that. I didn't do it, but the people before me did, unfortunately. Most of them, not everybody, but most of them. Now they've gate kept to the point where there's no information anymore. There's a disconnect. So I find myself being a bridge from the quote unquote old school to today. But the problem is I have to train people under me because no matter how hard I try, even if I'm the hippest old man in the world, and I'm not, but if I was, I'd still be an old man and still wouldn't be able to relate to these young whippersnappers, right? So that's the issue. So we have to be able to relate to these people. We have to be able to have them respect them. But you know what? A lot of people and a lot of cultures, and I've talked to many people about this, is you can call them every name in the book, and that doesn't make them half as mad as if you disrespect them.
Right.
So I've had to learn that in a lot of cultures, and you know this, in a lot of cultures, disrespect is one of the biggest things. So you have to go and you have to earn their respect first. You don't walk into a room and, hey man, I'm older than you. I know more than you. I've been around longer. You need to respect me. No, that doesn't work like that. You walk in and you show them that respect and you earn that respect and then you'll get it back. And I think a lot of coaches just don't understand that, where they say, well, these kids should just look up to me because I'm older and they should respect their elders. And I go, yeah, they should, but you should respect them too. Absolutely. And I usually walk in, I try to be humble, I try to be graceful, I try to be, gracious. I'm not graceful at all, but I'm gracious. But you try to meet people where they are. I think a lot of it too is, and this drives me nuts, and I've heard this from many, and no names because we're not trying to bash anyone, and it's really just a philosophy. It's really just a philosophy difference more than it is, it's, the whole flavors of ice cream thing, which, whatever, that's overused. But, the whole, I don't think that we should be trying to catch young people, right, on what they don't know. So MJF is complete. I know Max fairly well. I haven't seen him in a long time, but I know Max. He would know my name. He would know what I look like. That's a good thing. Good guy. Yeah. And I knew he was going to make it because he worked harder than everybody else and he was very talented. So when you're really talented and you outwork just about everybody in the room, you're fine. Problem is, we usually have one or the other, right? We don't usually have both. So we can't just expect blue chippers to come walking through the door. So when we insult people and go, well, this kid's not in good shape, he's skinny, he has bad gear, he has this and that. Well, okay. I will completely walk right up to you and say, you are correct, Coach X. But what are you doing to correct that behavior? Are you just saying, well, he'll figure it out himself? Are you saying, son, you need to, you really need to get better gear. This gear just isn't very good. It's loose on you. You lost weight, you gain weight, whatever. It doesn't fit you well. You need to get better gear. And also what I do too is I'll give them advice on how to afford it. I said, good gear is about 20 or 25 door dashes away. It's a few hours of overtime. It's an hour, a 10-hour part-time job on the weekends when you're not wrestling. It's 2 night shifts. If you work 8 to 5, you can work 6 to 10 at CVS or Walgreens or whatever. Yeah. There's always something you can do. And once you kind of make it real and you break it down for people, which very few people do, because it's easy just to say, hey, how long you been in the business, kid? 10 years. Oh, you sure? Oh, it doesn't look like it. Okay, that's fine. We all had a fun joke. But okay, but it's also your fault, dude, because you let this go. Because the thing is, like, we all let it go for this long. And now we have to bring it back. MJF is completely correct. I think people should be watching, because I think one of the things that we can all agree on, in my opinion, but I think it's a strong opinion, and I think it's an opinion that will be shared by most people, is there's a lot of sameness on wrestling these days. And when you and I grew up, everybody was coming from a different territory.
Yes.
The WWE, when I started watching WWE in 1984. You can't have a better example of people from 10 or 15 different territories all wrestling. That's why everybody wrestled so differently.
Yeah.
That's why they didn't. And NXT, and there are plenty of awesome coaches in NXT that are way better wrestlers than I am. So I'm not sitting here saying it's NXT's fault, but I think once you standardize something, okay, we met industry standards. And Alex Hormozy has talked about this. He tells a story about, well, we're meeting the industry standards. Okay, so you're average. Meeting industry standards is an average. It means you hand in a C. The reason Gunther looks so different is, and even when he was heavier, he was still in great shape. Now he's in better cosmetic shape. But he's still not, he's not going to look like Randy Orton.
Right.
Who also is different, by the way. But if you want to see, Randy Orton, his grandfather and his father, Cowboy Bob Orton's one of the most inventive wrestlers. He invented the RKO. So, I don't know if Randy took it from him, but I saw Bob Orton do the RKO just because looked like he was bored at a house show in Boston or Maryland, and just did it because it seemed like a cool move, and he did it and it didn't hurt anybody. So, but why does Gunther get over? Gunther gets over because he looks different, he acts different, he moves slower so people can catch up to him. And yeah, there's always going to be a few people that say he has quote unquote boring matches. But listen to the crowd.
Yeah.
And when and look, I think Sheamus, I like Sheamus. I think Sheamus is a talented guy, but Sheamus isn't always, he's literally as pale as I am, so I can't pick on him for that. But, Sheamus kind of was in a rut. And then all of a sudden, Sheamus and Gunther have the match of the night at WrestleMania. How did that work? Because they beat the crap out of each other.
Right.
But they didn't beat the crap out of each other where they had black eyes and broken knees and broken elbows. They beat the crap out of each other like a match, like a wrestling match. And people liked it because it woke everybody up, and it didn't look choreographed. And I can tell you that they probably either talked about it a lot or didn't talk about it as much, or they talked about certain things and had other room. Let's give some stuff room to breathe. Let's put, we don't have to talk about take 3 steps to the left and be here for this. And, and by the way, I don't have a problem with choreographing matches. You can talk over matches. I talk over matches. I've suggested dives for people. I've suggested, hey, do the dive on me here. Like, I'm not, do the big move, hit the 450 here. Like, I'm not telling people they can't do stuff. But the thing that breaks my heart the most is when I see, and it's usually a young person, and it's usually a young male, where they hit a move and it looks awesome. It's like the most bomb-ass move ever. And they nail it and nobody reacts.
Right.
Because they did it in the wrong place, or they just did it because they felt like it, or it wasn't the right match. or the right environment. That breaks my heart because they could have gotten seriously injured. And at least if you're going to get injured in front of 10,000 people when there's a contract on the line, when there's money on the line, when there's a payday on the line.
Not for
we
the
should
hot
never.
dog handshake.
Well, and there's times when a hot dog and handshake. Look, I paid for my first Ring of Honor tryout like everybody else, and it gave me 8.5 years in Ring of Honor. So I'm not ashamed to say I paid for things. But the thing is, when I went, I was ready, and I did something different. And I did, and guess what? They didn't even give me the job I wanted when I started in Ring of Honor at 37. From Mike Bennett, who was one of my trainees in real life. So and it took me 1.5 years to wrestle in that company, and then I ended up having 10 or 15 matches in Ring of Honor with everybody screaming in my face that I shouldn't be. Not everybody, you know what I mean, metaphorically. But with people saying, why is he in the company? Why is he doing that? Why is he doing this? And it's like, hey, man, I offered something different to Ring of Honor, and they liked it. And that's the thing that drives me. It doesn't drive me nuts, but I wish people would understand what MJF is saying. He's saying, circling back to that, the reason he's telling people to watch matches is because he's giving you the answer. The millionaire is handing you the key to the city if you take it. He's saying there is a tremendous dearth in the marketplace. There's a tremendous gap where a lot of people are looking the same, and not just body-wise, not just haircut-wise, not just gear-wise, but moves-wise and the way they structure their matches. So watch different stuff that got over. Watch Hulk Hogan. But don't watch Hulk Hogan for the this and the big boot and the leg drop. Watch how he put his matches together. Watch how he sold. Everybody talks about Ricky Morton. Ricky Morton's a friend of mine. You know, I'm so grateful to the universe for that, because I watched Ricky Morton. When I met Ricky Morton, I cried because he was one of the people I watched when I was a kid growing up, and now he's a buddy. Now I can text him. Like, that's so cool, right? But everybody talks about how Ricky Morton sells, and I agree. And everybody talks about how Ricky Steamboat sells. I also agree with that. Hulk Hogan. How about Tito Santana? You know, how about Robert Gibson, who's very underrated? And how about the times when Robert Gibson would sell and then Ricky Morton would get the tag? You know, how about a million other baby faces that you don't know very well? How about Brad Armstrong? Everybody talks about Brad Armstrong. Watch Brad Armstrong matches. Don't watch Brad Armstrong matches because Brad Armstrong does the most spectacular stuff in the world. But just watch how he does stuff. Watch how good he is. Just watch, like observe. And I always tell people, don't watch matches like a fan. Because if you watch matches like a fan, you're going to be looking for moves and excitement. Watch matches like they're your two big brothers or two big sisters, or if it's a tag team match, like they're your older siblings telling you, sit down, damn it, and watch this match and learn something. And if you watch it with that spirit, I've done it myself. If you watch with that spirit, it's a whole different way of looking at matches. And what the second thing that MJF said that got attention, but not as much attention, is he's not afraid when Kyle Fletcher's there, Will Ospreay or Omega or any of these guys. He's not afraid of what they do in their matches. He goes, because they're not going to do what I do.
Right.
Because MJF has so many tools in the bag. If he sees a similar spot, if he sees a similar finish, he's like, we'll just do A, B, or C. Otherwise, we'll just do something else. I have a million things I can reach back. When you're a student of the game and you have a lot of experience watching stuff and you can borrow from that stuff, that's what you should draw from and use it in your matches and experiment with it. Try wrestling a little bit different. When I started going out to see, I didn't really start traveling until I was 17 or 18 years in wrestling, like traveling all over the country.
Right.
So at that point, I had a lot of confidence in what I could do. So I would go out and do a bunch of different stuff, not completely different, so nobody understood it. But I wouldn't be afraid to experiment. I wouldn't be afraid to, all right, this match, I'm going to be heel and I'm going to work the crowd, but I'm not going to say anything. And I just make faces at people and gesture and say as little as possible. And then other times I'm going to be talking my ear off. And then when I'm a babyface, I'm going to do something different. And then I would experiment how I reacted, because again, I was a heel for most of my career, and then all of a sudden I'm on the road and they want to make me a babyface. Okay, well, how do I have a babyface match? And then
one of the
10, 12 years ago, jump in. Yeah.
wait, no, you go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
Oh, I was fortunate enough to. Yeah, I've never been a wrestler. I've never been a part of the business outside of the podcast, and having good friends inside the business. And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever heard about pro wrestling was keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, keep your mouth shut, and just not through osmosis, but by reading the room, by hearing what's being said, learn about the business. And it was said to me by someone I had a lot of respect for when it comes to pro wrestling. So you spent a lot of years, traveling the country, and now that person works for the WWE. So I can get behind, sometimes you have to do something different. You have to bring something different to the table. Because if it's all just the same thing, then I think that was one of the biggest complaints about the WWE during when there was no AEW, there was no WCW, was there's just a mold that WWE is making its wrestlers out to be, the next John Cena, the next Batista, the next whoever. When in reality, I feel like it's that when you can bring together multiple flavors, different cosmetics, and you said it, you started on it, but the whole every flavor of ice cream, absolutely, because I feel like wrestling is better when there is variety and there is choices and there is options.
Yeah, and it's like music, it's like comedy, it's like drama, it's there's so many wrestlers borrow from anime now. So many wrestlers borrow from a lot of lucha. There's a lot of lucha being taught. I know Mike Quackenbush goes around the country and teaches a lot of lucha style stuff and European style stuff. And I think that stuff's great. I think everybody should. I knew how to base for lucha stuff because one of the guys who originally trained me, his name was Gil, but he wrestled as Gino Caruso, not the one in New Jersey. There's actually two Gino Carusos for a while. But he used to wrestle in Mexico in the 80s. So he taught us some very basic basing and lucha stuff. And then when I met more lucha people, I asked if I was teaching it correctly, and they said yes. And and the European stuff I just learned from watching tapes and trial and error and things like that. And then a lot of stuff I learned from people who knew judo and things like that. I mean, I try to put some realism to it too. Not that we all have to beat each other up, but I think a lot of it it's choreographed and you lose the people. I think it's the one I always use. Have you ever been to Vegas?
Yes.
Okay, so have you been to Circus? Have you ever eaten at the buffet at Circus?
Yes, I have.
All right, so you know what's above you when you eat, right? All the people are spinning around and doing like tricks and things like that. Well, you look at it and you go, that's cool, but you don't have there's no emotional tie to it. They're just moving wallpaper. But what if two of them started getting into an argument and all of a sudden they grabbed each other and fell and smashed right into your plate of scrambled eggs and they kept throwing fists, right?
Yeah.
Now there's a real emotion. Or what if it was your kid up there doing it? Okay, and what if you knew the story of whatever, your kid's up there, or your kid's up there with his wife and they're romantically attached and there's a story there, right? So if we have a story, if there's meaning behind it, now we have meaning behind the movement. But if it's just movement without meaning, you become moving wallpaper. And that's why I think most of the people that are doing a lot of the moves, they don't attach any meaning because, look, it's the video game. We talked about video games earlier. If I go faster, then it'll create more excitement. But the problem is when you go faster a lot of times with no stopping and no breathing, it's just speed. And I can point to some nice, fairly current, a few years ago. But we used to hear this all the time. Oh, it was nonstop action. This movie has nonstop action in it. the Avengers, Age of all, all those, right? Age of Ultron, the whole thing, right? Nonstop action. No, they didn't have nonstop action. They had three big set pieces. They had a big one in the beginning usually. They had a big one in the middle, and then right before, right after, and then they had the all is lost moment, and then here comes the big baby face comeback, right? That's almost every movie. Okay, that is not nonstop action. The action probably made up about 40 minutes of the 2 hour and 40-minute movie, but people think it's nonstop action. It's not. But what happens is the action makes such a big impression, care about the people involved. Now I'll give you the other version. Those rotten whacking the shit out of each other, and you can't tell which one's winning, and because it just looks like a bunch of car parts flying around up there in a big ball rolling around, and the story's weird and convoluted, and you can't tell who's beating each other up, and it's a mess.
Yeah,
that's the two differences, or the martial arts movie where there's no story. There's plenty of martial arts movies with a story. You want a martial arts movie with a story? How about Best of the Best? Best of the Best has a great story. And Eric Roberts sells like the biggest babyface in history. You should be watching him if you want to learn how to sell the leg. Because he sells the leg like a wrestler. Like, great movie. But it's not nonstop action. The Karate Kid was not nonstop action. Karate Kid was about 11 minutes of action wrapped up into a story between a teenager trying to figure out who he was and an old man trying to give back and them connecting with each other. That's the whole story. And it spawned 6 seasons of a TV series and 8 movies?
Sure, yeah.
Right.
They're coming out with stuff.
Right, exactly. So stop with the nonstop action. Give people good action, well executed stuff. Jim Cornette calls it difficulty level of a 5, execution of a 10. I agree with him, so I'm going to quote him directly. You need to have really good looking stuff done where people care about it, done to a person they care about, and done to another person they care about. Now, you may love one, hate the other. You may like one and not like the other one as much. I know wrestling's a little bit more nuanced. I'd like to see a little bit more straight good guys and bad guys, because I think that would actually help this a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, and this is me making a plea to the industry almost, we have to stop raising I think raising your standards is awesome. Raising your standards as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, as a human being, as someone, if you're, I've seen people who, used to be racist who are not racist anymore. I've seen people go the other way, where they've been hurt, they've been they've sinned, and they've done terrible things. We've seen transformations before. What I'd like to see in the industry is that we kind of put a halt to this. And I bet WWE they have to kind of be the leader, and I think they're going to have to, because how many people are getting hurt? I mean, half their roster of main eventers are on the disabled list, and the other guys are 45 to 50 years old. So they're going to get hurt. You have to slow down. You don't have to slow down to a stop. I don't want people doing 20-minute tests of strength and the whole crowd falls asleep. But I bet we could do a lot less and get a lot more out of it. And by a lot less, I mean probably 30 to 40% less. But I don't think people would even miss it. You start taking a few spots away from guys, I don't think they'd miss it. I just don't think the crowd would miss it. I think the crowd is into the characters, the people, singing, the promos, the larger than life, the stuff we all grew up on. I think people pretty much want to see the same thing.
So Bob, with that in mind, and as somebody who is the outsider looking in, right? One of the things that I see about pro wrestling that we didn't see 10 years ago was the frequency of running events. The WWE has slowed down its live events. It's a machine that would promote, they used to be like 300 days on the road or 280 days on the road. And now even like on a Monday Night Raw, where we used to get, half a dozen matches. Now we're getting maybe 2 or 3 matches. Pay-per-views that used to be stacked with matches are now a 5-card event. Do you think there's anything to the infrequency of running events that could also be contributing to the injuries? Because I mean, a ball in motion stays in motion, and a ball in rest stays in rest. And when these guys who were working multiple times a week and now working twice, maybe 3 times a week, I feel like that could certainly slow down their abilities in the ring and could potentially cause opportunities for injury.
Well, and I agree. And also, where do you have the house show matches?
Yeah.
Where do you have matches where you do a little bit less and tell more of a story? There's no place to have house show matches unless it's AEW and some of the guys and girls can work indies. But I'm sorry, like if you were a struggling independent wrestler and you make $100,000 a year now, you're not going to be rushing out. And you know, the schedule is less. I agree, but you may be wrestling Wednesday and you may be wrestling Saturday. And you're going to be traveling those days, which means you're going to be traveling Tuesday. So it's still basically, if you work both shows, you're still working a 4 or 5 day schedule. You know, not as grueling as it used to be, of course, but it's still, and you're going to be on TV. There's no non-televised matches anymore, really, unless you're, and if you're a young talent who maybe only works Ring of Honor, hey, work Ring of Honor, and then they may be encouraging people. I know some of the coaches at AEW quite well. And a lot of them say we do encourage these people to work the independents. But Bob, when you make a minimum wage job and all of a sudden you get your dream and now you're making 6 figures and you're making $2,000 a week, and you have to take taxes out and all that, but your medical is pretty much taken care of. Like, I mean, where's the incentive? I mean, at least the financial incentive.
Right.
And I think people should be doing it for reps. But then there's the old catch-22, right? I know I should be going out in the independents, and I'll be the first one to admit it. I'm a huge fan of the independents, but the independents is quite inconsistent as far as talent, as far as experience level. You may wrestle somebody who is not very good and not very strong and may hurt you. You may wrestle somebody who's awesome. My guess is you'll probably wrestle someone in between, and you may not have the skills to take care of yourself in that environment. Because I know that I definitely have to take care of myself in that environment. You know, like I can't, I tell people, I said, you basically can't, you can't bump me too much. You can't lift me up too much. And I don't know you. And I'm sorry, but I have a town to make the next day. I have a company I got to run on Monday. I can't be, doing a bunch of crazy stuff. And that doesn't mean I won't do stuff. I'm just going to do stuff that's safe.
Right.
And basically, when you wrestle me on the road, you're wrestling my match, and you are co-starring in my match. That doesn't mean I'm not going to lose to you. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to make you look good, but I'm going to call most of it because I can usually call the smarter match, the match that makes the most sense, and the match that's going to make, the fans satisfied and nobody's going to be upset. And we're not, and that doesn't mean we're going to be lazy. There's no such thing as being lazy. Because if you're lazy out there, you definitely are going to get hurt because you're not prepared. Right. I still go to the gym. I still work out. I train at 2 different wrestling schools quite often. So I'm in there and I'm doing it. But to ask somebody again who struggled for years, finally got the break, well, I thought I'm a national wrestler. I don't necessarily need to go and get reps on the road. And I respect that. I do, because I don't know the answer to that. There's no one answer, right? So that's the tough part. I agree with you, though, that I think your body does get used to these situations. You do get a little more calloused, so to speak. And I think you get there is a bit of a, I think, the whole iron sharpens iron and things like that, like you said. Where I think if you stay in motion, I think that usually helps. And also, again, I think we talked about it in a variety of ways. You're basically sprinting for 5 minutes now. Unless you have a 20-minute match where you can take a little bit of time in the beginning and then you can do your false finishes and get a rest there. And the risk is just so much higher. They're doing tombstones on the outside of the floor, the stairs. They're doing brain busters. They're doing a lot more high angle suplexes and stuff where they're landing on the back of their head. and their necks. And I hate, and this is more of a prayer that it doesn't happen because I don't want to be right. But I hate to see how that's going to go. I mean, Will Ospreay, and God love him. I haven't seen Will in a long time, but I used to see him in Ring of Honor all the time. But Will Ospreay should not have a variety of injuries. Tommaso Ciampa, who is a dear friend, had knee problems when he started in wrestling.
Yeah.
And, and neck issues and things like that. And like, he's one of the most determined human beings I've ever met in my life. I mean, if he told me he was going to pull a truck across Kansas, I'd say, watch out for Kansas because it's just going to happen.
Right.
He's just that guy, So, and he was, and again, he said this publicly, he was grateful to WWE, but he felt like he had more to offer AEW. Nothing wrong with that. But now he's got to turn it on, and knowing him, he's going to do, a lot of stuff, and he's not 25 anymore. He was hurting himself when he was 25.
Yeah.
And now he's getting closer to 40. And, I really hope I know he's great enough to have awesome matches where he doesn't do some of that stuff. And I just really hope that he does it. And this is not a criticism. It's more of a plea. I just really hope that people start taking a look and saying, they're here for the entrance. They're here for the promo. They're here for the T-shirt sales. They're here for they're doing everything in the other direction, which makes me laugh. And then they run around 100 miles an hour with the underneath guys, and they're realizing that the matches, they're not showing a lot of matches because they think the matches are why the people are quiet. People are quiet because characters, and when the characters run around, they don't relate to them anymore. And plus, like, how do you give somebody a tombstone on a sorry to interrupt, but how do you give somebody a tombstone on the floor? Like they used to shoot, and it doesn't have to be 1980 Georgia anymore, where we give somebody Ted DiBiase a pile driver on the floor and he's out for 2 months. I get that because he went to Japan.
Right.
But we could, if you sell that a pile driver hurts, I don't understand how that would be damaging, because that would only help everyone. Because, and you remember this, and he just retired. AJ Styles. Remember when he had that little run where he, and it really wasn't his fault. It was really nobody's fault. He hurt Roderick Strong with it. He hurt the gentleman from Japan who was in Tatsu, Yoshi.
Yoshi Tatsu.
Thank you, Yoshi Tatsu. And then somebody else who was like a near miss, and he kind of Tatsu was seriously injured, but he came back, thank goodness. And Roddy was just dinged up. He was okay. But all of a sudden, AJ Styles, when he went to hit the Styles Clash, the people were screaming, especially in Japan. Yeah. They were screaming because now it was dangerous. Now, we don't need to hurt people for real. But, I remember when Jake the Snake would hit the DDT on all the enhancement guys, and he hit it on me once too, so I know, and he beat me with it. But he beat Rick Rude when the feud was over. Like, he didn't hit it on anyone. He never hit it on the Honky Tonk Man. He might hit it on Jimmy Hart every once in a while. But, I mean, he wrestled Honky Tonk Man for 6 months and hit it on him once. He he wrestled Ted DiBiase for months and didn't hit it on him. Never hit it on Andre the Giant. I was there for some of those house show matches. It was Andre the Giant choking Jake the Snake Roberts for like 10 straight minutes and standing on him. It wasn't, but when Jake fought back and did the place went crazy.
For sure.
Right. Because we didn't always give it to people,
I was at the AEW Dynamite event. You kind of briefly mentioned Kyle Fletcher and Ciampa were in that title match. And it was a lot of what you say is very much can be applied to that moment, like where there were so many big moves in such a short amount of time. And I feel like a lot of those moves totally got slept on because of it was one big move right after the other, and the fans didn't get an opportunity to digest what was in front of them, didn't get a chance to react. And so it felt like that stage kept getting risen in that match where the stakes weren't high enough, and we have to see more and more and more, and it got very much like that gladiator kind of environment where like I need to see someone die in this ring because what they're literally killing each other right now. And I tend to agree with you that I think I'm not saying that we don't need that high impact style of wrestling, but I think less is more. And to what you were saying earlier in the conversation, the selling, taking a moment to let the fans breathe in what's happening. You mentioned Hogan earlier, and I never really thought of Hogan as somebody who sells because he's the immortal and he hulks up, but there were times where he was sitting there shaking and just needing those Hulkamaniacs to get behind him. And it wasn't always, hulking out. A lot of times he was on the mat just taking the punishment. And I don't think we see a lot of that, at least I don't see a lot of that these days. So I do agree with you on that point. Because again, Ciampa and Fletcher, it was a hell of a match. It was amazing. But I imagine if they slowed it down just a little bit and allowed the fans to breathe in what they were doing, I think it would have been a much better story.
Well, and the thing is, it's like Kyle Fletcher could be a main eventer. And I mean, he kind of is.
Yeah.
But, and he also has like, when he talked to Chris Van Vliet, I was like, and I guess I expected like a cool ass dude, right? But he's kind of awkward. And he's kind of like, hunched in it, this like, and he's a handsome guy, but he's just like, he was kind of like awkward and stiff. But it was charming in a way. Like it was different. Like I don't mind seeing a piece of that too, like and that kind of thing.
You mentioned Will Ospreay, and
right.
I've always known him as the superstar from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I didn't really follow British wrestling, but I did see that documentary that he was in, and I can't remember the name of it, but they talked about how his struggles in high school and elementary school and how things didn't come easy for him, and wrestling kind of was that outlet. And it showed a lot of his awkwardness as well, and really made him very endearing as a person, because you got to see this other side of hey man, he's not just a cool guy that does cool moves. He struggles with life just like everybody else does. And I do feel like there is value in that, and allowing the audience to connect with talent in a different way. I feel like there is room for both. I do believe that high impact style of wrestling is fun. It's interesting, but to your point earlier with the comparison to the Marvel movies, we do get backstory. We do get time to celebrate the victories and be sad about the pitfalls and having that connection to that actor, portraying Wolverine or portraying Captain America. We have that connection. So when they do make that sacrifice, there's so much more feeling to it. When they do have the victory, there's so much more feeling to it. And I agree with you on that one for sure.
Well, yeah. And there's also like, think about the moments.
Yeah.
I mean, when Thanos snaps his fingers like that, and the people start fading away. Like I knew what was up.
Yeah.
And obviously we knew they were, but a lot of people were like destroyed by that. Like, I don't mean destroyed, like they couldn't, they were, ready to end it all. But I mean, they were like, people were crying. People were like super sad. People were, people were emotional over that, and, but I also remember like, I went to the theater and, Captain America picks up the Thor's hammer and the place went crazy.
Yes.
Like, this is a fake movie that we're watching on a video screen, and we all know what's happening. Like, and the Minecraft where Jack Black said the chicken thing or whatever it was, like whatever. But it's the moments, like it's because, and it was all like it was a shared thing. Like, and watch Hogan when he sells, like it's vulnerability, and there's not a lot of vulnerability when you get up from stuff. Like Hulk Hogan would miss something in the corner or miss like a elbow. And I'm not saying it has to be this simple, but there is a lesson in the simplicity of the whole thing where it's, he'd miss with something and then he'd be on the cell, and Greg the Hammer Valentine or the Iron Sheik or Big John Studd or Andre or whoever, Mr. Perfect, would start beating the hell out of him. And really, there might be one false hope spot, one little hope spot to get him going, and then he'd get knocked down again. And finally, they'd go to hit the finish on him. He'd hulk up, but that was later. Like in the beginning, if you watch, and one of the things I tell people to watch, because it's such a, and it's kind of interesting because most of it's on YouTube, because I don't think, and I'd love to see the actual truth behind this, but the Philadelphia Spectrum shows that WWF had from, I would say probably 79, 80 to about 87 or 88. Those are all on YouTube, and they are not part of the WWE network in any form or fashion.
Huh.
So I don't know what's going on. Obviously, there's got to be some sort of legal thing, and WWE pissed off the place that owns the tapes, and they won't let them have them because they have all the house show stuff from Boston. They have the stuff from MSG Network in New York. They have all the other stuff, LA. But the Spectrum stuff sits on YouTube. But it's fascinating, especially in like 1983, 84, 85, because that's when they're becoming a national company. And to see Hogan then, Hogan was like stone cold back then. He cheated like crazy. He raked eyes, and Philly was such a weird crowd, man. They boo everybody. They booed everybody in the beginning. Hogan would get like a 75-25 reaction, and then they'd kind of say, all right, good guy, show us how tough you are. And then a lot of guys would win him over, and a lot of guys wouldn't. And I remember one time, and this is Backlund after he held the belt for 5.5 years, like him and B. Brian, just a weird match. It was like late 1984. He's about to leave the company, and it's him and B. Brian Blair challenging Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch for the tag titles. And they boo him incessantly. But then he has such a good showing, and Adonis and Murdoch get him over so much that the crowd actually likes him at the end. It's the weirdest thing, you know? And it was just such a wild time. Like, prove it to us. So you had to get over, and you had 10 minutes to get over. And a lot of times they just boo you out of the building, and you never would get over. But there were times when people would win their respect. And it's such an interesting, like I said, just an interesting microcosm. And it goes to what our friend MJF said. Watch that stuff and learn from it. It's such a cool time, you know, and there's wrestling on it. There's fighting on it. There's different kind of matches on it. And it's every legend you've pretty much seen, maybe for the exception of like Ric Flair and those guys.
Right.
But it's phenomenal, man. Like, and people just watch it go by and they don't study it. Like, it's not study it like it's boring, you know, reading books in English class. Like, watch it as a fan, and then watch it as a wrestler. Like, it's cool as hell. You get a lot out of it, you know?
So we've been talking for a little over an hour now, and I'll keep you as long as you're willing to hang out with us. But if you,
I can hang out for a little while longer.
If you need to go, give me the old I gotta go thing. But I did want to hit up real quick because you are going to be a part of the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators event happening on I believe it's March 6th at the Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey, as our friend Jaden would say, the beautiful rustic Glassboro, New Jersey. These events, I've been able to watch them online. Obviously, I'm not a student at Rowan University, but I have watched most of the matches that they post on YouTube. And it seems like such a cool environment. The venue that they have there at the Rowan University, I think it's like the student center. And it just, you'll if you ever watch the videos, you could see there are some people who are just walk by and don't really care about what's going on. But you also have kids who just sit there. And I say kids because, you know, they're like 18, 19, 20. They sit there and they get into the show, and it's not the WWE, but for them it is. It's real life body slams and headbutts and drop kicks and suplexes right there, right in front of them. And I feel like the appreciation that Dog gets when they go to Rowan University, I think it's well deserved. And it's a cool spot for both Dog to be there, but also for Rowan to get such a high caliber professionalism and wrestling when they show up to do these events. Do you know who you're facing yet when you're going to be in Glassboro? Uh-oh. Did we lose you?
Here, hold on. We're good. Yeah, I'll be
I can
back.
hear you, but you're frozen. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Bob froze on us, so he's going to try to log back in. But again, that event takes place on March the 6th at Rowan University. At Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, they do have another event coming up on May the 2nd. But before they get there, they will be at, like we said, on March 6th at Rowan University. It's a private event. You can't attend unless you're a student at Rowan, but they do put those matches on YouTube. On March 15th, they'll be at the Nerd Force Fan Fest at Rowan University. That's only going to be a table event, but they will be probably signing autographs and taking pictures and that sort of thing. On April 4th, they'll be at the South Jersey Geek Fest in Gloucester County for the 4-H Fairgrounds. They'll be part of that. On May 2nd, they will be at Pinelands Regional High School in Little Egg Harbor for their next big event. So a lot of good wrestling and supporting action coming to Glassboro and to the greater New Jersey area with Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. Now, Bob, right before you left, I asked you, did you know who you're facing yet for this event at Rowan University?
Well, one of the things I like to do is I like to call people out, and I like to give myself a challenge. And even though I told you I'm on the downside of my wrestling career, it doesn't mean I still don't have gas in the tank, and it doesn't mean that I'm not always looking for a challenge and looking to do something, before my career is over. So one of the people I've always admired since I've known him is Tank Toland. Now, Tank is, someone I used to watch in OVW, someone I watched in WWE, someone I've kept in touch with. And I consider Tank, I would say maybe frenemies or acquaintance or something like that, where, we've had a lot of respect for each other. There's been a lot of competition between us. And so I'm going to, I've already kind of put this out there privately, but I'm going to put it out there publicly too. Tank, what I want to do is, we talked a lot today about young people and, how, if we believe in the young people. So Tank, why don't you bring someone that you've been mentoring, and I'll bring someone that I've been mentoring, and let's do a little tag team match. And that doesn't mean we're going to let the young guys do all the work. That means you and I are finally going to go face to face at least a little bit. Now, Tank, I've always said, and this is an old saying, but it's true, it'll take a good man to beat you, but it won't take him long. And I consider myself a good man, and I think I'm going to beat you. So that's a challenge I put out forward. Now, I'm still waiting for official word, but as far as I know, unofficial word is that I'm going to get what I want. So we shall see what happens. But that's where I'm coming from. That's what I want to see. I want to see, and I put it out there, myself and a young buck, somebody that and I don't mean Nick or Matt, but a young buck, someone who I can have under my wing. And I have a few choices, and I'm not going to give it away. And Tank, I don't want you to give it away for me either. But I want you to pick someone. I'm going to pick someone. And then we're going to have a tag team match. And whoever has it will have bragging rights, at least until the next big Rowan University event. So that's what I'm putting forward. That's what I put forward several weeks ago. And I've never gotten official word, but it looks good. That's what's going to happen.
I think that's awesome, for one, because you're also you're putting a spotlight on two up and comers, which I think is great. And at Rowan University, I think the audience, one of the great things about Rowan University students is when that wrestling is happening, they're engaged, they're into it. Like I said, there are some people who just walk by, but if you go watch their YouTube videos, you could see these matches, and there's been a lot of those matches that have happened in Rowan University. The fans get into it, and they really do. And I think that's such a great symbiotic relationship between Rowan and Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, because they're providing a very professional, a very good looking wrestling event. And then obviously the students there get to have a night of entertainment, and I think it's a win-win for everybody.
I agree.
You know, we were talking a lot about your career and 34 plus years, but you've done everything. I mean, you've been a part of enhancement in the WWE back in the day.
Hmm.
You've held titles in the NWA, and and now you've said it. You're kind of on the back nine, but you're still putting on matches and you're still giving back to the business. But I would like to ask you about your time with the NWA if we have a little bit of
Sure.
time for that.
Yeah.
Now you distinctly were a part of two kind of interesting this. You were there with Jason Rumble with the NWA
Hmm.
New England area, and that's where you would hold the New England television title twice. Uh, that was such a different time and place. Before the NWA really, it was post ECW, it was post Jim Crockett Promotions, it was post New Japan Pro Wrestling and EMLL all leaving the National Wrestling Alliance, and it was very much a
Yep.
rebuilding time for the NWA. You had like Joe Price down in Florida. You had
Hmm.
Howard Brody also in Florida. You had a lot of the NWA territories. We had promotions in Texas and promotions in the Midwest.
Bill
But of
Barron's
course, Bill, yeah,
for
absolutely,
Wild Side
Barons
in
and
Georgia. Yep.
yes, but you
Yep.
were working with a Rumble up in Maine. And tell me about working with Rumble in that time and how the NWA was at that point. Because as someone who's followed the product for as long as I have, I really have only been
Okay.
watching the NWA since
Wait till it
maybe
connects before I answer.
2002. Um, and he will answer when he comes back. Let's see. Thank you
Are we
for
back?
waiting because I heard you say that. I'm gonna wait till it reconnects. Perfect.
Yeah. So,
So tell me
well,
about that
actually,
time.
yeah, I will. So I didn't really do much with Jason Rumble until later. My stuff was with Tony Rumble, the original Boston Bad Boy, and I did
Okay,
most of my
okay,
stuff in Massachusetts. Now I had met Tony. Technically, I did meet him in Maine years before that, and I did a couple of shows for the Savoldis, which NWA kind of spun out of. NWA New England kind of spun out of. So um, Scott Dickinson, who was a WCW referee and a Tony Rumble, an ally of Tony Rumble and myself, said, "Hey, I told Tony Rumble, hey, this guy is good. We should use him. A different vibe, different thing like that." And I was looking to branch out and do some different things too. So ended up being there on and off with Tony Rumble because they used to do these marathon tapings at a place which is kind of like Dave and Buster's called Good Time Emporium
okay.
in Somerville, Mass, right outside of Boston. And sometimes we do 3 TV tapings a day. But don't worry, he only paid you once. So, you know, but you were expected to be there at like 12, whatever, 12, 3, and 7 or whatever it was. Not a lot of perks aside from a chance to be on something a little more above the usual independent. But it was fun. I got to wrestle some cool people. I got to meet a ton of people. I got to be at John Cena's only Massachusetts indie match he did against Frankie Kazarian,
Right.
and that was a little later, but the same building, but for New England Championship Wrestling. But yeah, and Tony was always great to me. He was a character. He was a real piece of work.
I've heard
Not
that
everybody.
as a
Yeah,
positive and a negative when it comes to him.
I think that fits. Like I said, I always got along good with him. Again, there were some people who thought he was shady. He was pretty upfront with me. It was never about money because he didn't pay well. It was about exposure and, but he didn't pay anybody well, you know? And, he was a hustler. He was a street guy from Boston, that's who he was. So, and he did what he did. So, but again, he was always cool to me. He was always good. I think, he passed away at an early age.
Yeah.
He was in his 40s, and really should have been around a lot longer, and it's too bad. But again, he was always cool to me. I liked him a lot. I knew who he was. I knew what he was, and I just, you could either work for him or not work for him. So at the end, it got a little, because he was putting pressure on people not to work other places, and that was difficult. And then there were always talks about, when he went out of business, there's always talks about him coming back. And then when he passed away, that was it. And then Sheldon Goldberg kind of picked up the mantle at New England Championship Wrestling, and that went well for a while, and then it didn't. So I also wrestled for the NWA Commonwealth title a few times.
Right, down in
against
Virginia.
No, not in Virginia.
Oh, no.
Well, actually yes in Virginia, but that was years later. I actually had a couple of matches on my shows against a young Finn Balor, then Fergal Devitt at the time.
Yeah. So speaking of that,
yeah,
this is a replica of the belt that you wrestled for, that British Commonwealth Championship belt.
Very cool.
That title belt had spent some time here in Southern California with Dave Marquez and the NWA Hollywood group, as it became, and then now Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Right.
They didn't have a world title because the world title was with TNA Wrestling at the time. So initially, before they built their title, they had Finn Balor and also Drew Onyx, who was the
Drew quite well.
Yep. They spent a lot of time out here in Southern California, and then the title did spend some time in Santa Monica, which everyone remembers that time when England had jurisdiction over Santa Monica. So of course the title itself has a lot of positive memories for me, because I got to see that. That was the first NWA title I got to see up close and personal living in Southern California. But
we had the funny story about that with Fergal is Fergal had his first few matches in the States near us in Mass, because he had family in Massachusetts. So we were the first place that he visited when he was in the States.
Yeah.
So I said, "Hey man, I'd love to have one of those European matches with the rounds." And he's like, "Great." So he shows up, and I said, I'm not worried about winning the belt from you. So do you want to put the belt up? He's like, "Yeah." And I said, "All right, so how do we do these European rounds matches?" He's like, "I don't know. I've never done one before." That's odd. I was like, okay. So I said, best, I think it's 5 3-minute rounds. Are you there? Did I lose you?
Yeah.
I think I lost you again.
No, I can hear you. I don't know if you can see me. You were there.
Hold on, I'll get you back.
All right. It's funny that he mentions the British style of wrestling, because there was a promotion during the Monday Night Wars. It might have even been shortly after that. That was an independent wrestling promotion that had a syndicated TV deal where they called it like America Championship Wrestling, but they did their style of wrestling with the European style of rounds and points. I know that Greg the Hammer Valentine and Tito Santana were a part of that. You mentioned the European style of wrestling. Do you, and this is just as a fan to fan here, not necessarily working for them, but do you recall, I think it was American Championship Wrestling, that it was I think it was during the Monday Night Wars where they started another wrestling promotion. They had syndication, but not like an actual TV deal. And they would do wrestling, like a round-based wrestling, and they were using guys who were a little bit older in the sport, like Greg Valentine and Tito Santana. Does that sound familiar to you at all? Oh, we lost Bob. Oh, well, it's not important. If we can get Bob back, we'll ask him a few more questions. He's been very generous with his time, and I was hoping for an hour. We've had him for an hour and a half, so I'm very grateful for the time that he has given us today. I was just asking you about American Championship Wrestling. I think that was the name of the promotion.
Oh no, it was American. Yeah, I was screaming it to you because I actually knew the answer. So It was AWF.
That's the American
AWF.
Wrestling
Yeah,
Federation. That's right.
that's what it was. Yeah.
I would record it on VHS and then watch it later and see like Tito Santana and Greg Valentine wrestling
Yep.
in these
He was the
European
booker.
falls that you
Tito
mentioned.
was the booker for. Yeah, it was the booker for a while. It was weird.
It wasn't the greatest wrestling, but when like for me as a kid, and I would love to hear about your experiences, as a kid watching wrestling. If it was wrestling, I was watching it. So I grew up in California where we had, the WWF on syndication, and we had access to Lucha Libre because that was on the Spanish speaking channels, and then
Right.
of course there was Glow Wrestling on syndication, and
Mhm.
then once cable came to my neighborhood, then I was introduced to the NWA through Jim Crockett Promotions, and
Right.
eventually World Class on ESPN and AWA on ESPN Classics and that sort of thing. What was your experience growing up? I've heard that on the East Coast there's always been a much greater access to pro wrestling. What did you grow up watching?
Well, I started watching when Hogan and Piper kind of did the War to Settle the Score and the MTV stuff, and
Yeah.
I was 11. It's such a great time to become a wrestling fan. And then maybe a year later, I'd say late '85, I actually came across TBS, and it was right when Bill Watts had it for like a couple of months, and he was running Mid-South, and I thought that was the coolest wrestling. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So I remember they showed clips of that match between Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Ted DiBiase, where it was the lights out in a cage, no disqualification, tuxedo, something, this coal miners guy. It was every stipulation in the world.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, I remember watching highlights from Starrcade '85. So that's pretty much so that was Thanksgiving of '85. So that's right when I started watching, I think, regularly. And, so that was pretty much the wrestling I watched. Obviously, World Class was on. AWA I watched, but I didn't really care for it. It was kind of boring to me. But I loved NWA. I thought NWA was the greatest. I love WWF, obviously, because those are the shows I could go to.
Right.
With monthly house shows, which just seem so abstract to people that they used to have wrestling every month live in front of thousands of people. And I know some people had it weekly live in front of thousands of people, but I used to go to, I didn't go every month, but I went to the Providence Civic Center, which is now the AMP, the Amica Mutual Pavilion. But I used to go, probably 5-6 times a year. I didn't necessarily go every month, but I went quite often. And that was when I was a teenager. Like I got my license, and as soon as I got my license, we were driving to wrestling, driving to the box office, parking in front, trying not to get a ticket, running inside, buying a ticket for the show that weekend.
Yeah.
And then running back in your car, and I got the tickets, and we're off to the races. And then you go on Saturday or Friday or whatever it was. And,
When I was growing up, the WWE was always in Los Angeles, San Bernardino,
Yep.
San Diego, and occasionally we'd get Jim Crockett Promotions out in Los Angeles.
Yep.
There was the Grand Olympic, but that closed right before I
Right.
started watching wrestling, so I missed out on a lot of that. Although thankfully ECW of all places ran the Grand Olympic, and I got to be in that venue for that, and then later.
Oh, nice.
XPW was there, and that was a different kind of feeling. I much preferred the ECW version.
Yeah.
So growing up, and you said that you loved the NWA and you loved watching these WWF events live. What did it mean for you, early in your career when you were working enhanced matches for the WWF? What did that mean for you? Did you feel like that was a point where you had made it, or was that just another bump in the road for you?
Well, I got a taste when I was a kid. I mean, my first match, and it's on several different environments on YouTube, me against Atom Bomb from the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, the building where Shawn Michaels lost a smile. Not the same day. He didn't watch my match and lose a smile. This was years later. So,
Good.
But no, it was. I wrestled there once. I thought I was going to be a regular job guy there, and right then you didn't care. You didn't care about losing. You cared about making the money.
Yeah.
$150 was a lot of money in 1993. It's a lot of money now.
Sure.
And it debuted on my 21st birthday on the weekend. So it was a couple weeks before, and then it debuted on Labor Day.
Uh-oh. I lost you again, Bob. And I really want to hear this answer because I think it's interesting. You just came back on. You're back on now.
There you are. Yes.
So the last thing we heard is that it came on Labor Day and then it kind of went out on us.
Yeah, it came on Labor Day. That was the weekend of because my birthday's September 3rd, so it's almost always around Labor Day. So it was the weekend of my 21st birthday. I got the gift of being on TV, so everybody could see me. That's
pretty awesome.
It was cool.
I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty cool birthday gift.
And then I thought I was going to be back on a regular basis, and I called a couple times, and they said they would get in touch with me. And since they got in touch with me the first time, that's what I did. And I didn't keep calling and bug the office or anything. I just kind of called a couple times. They said they didn't need anybody, and they'd call me if they did. And then I just didn't. And I thought I did a good enough job. I did as good as anybody else did.
Sure.
But that was that. And then I didn't go back for 6 years. And I got booked as a last-minute replacement for someone else. Yeah, I got booked as a last-minute replacement for someone else in Boston. This is years later, 1999, and it was the day that Vince McMahon took off the hood and said, "It was me all along, Austin." So
what a great night to be there.
Who knows, man? Maybe they booked me to be that guy. I don't think so.
They changed their mind at the last minute, Bob.
It wasn't going to be me. I mean, and never even told me. Can you imagine? Actually, the next year, I was briefly. I was going to be the doctor Mayo. Yep, that could have been me, but I kind of boo-boo faced it because I thought I was this big, serious pro wrestler at the time. What a joke, right? But I thought I was young and not that young though. I was 28 or 29. I wasn't a baby.
Sure.
And I was this big serious wrestler now. That's below me. That's beneath me, and I could have been part of one of the most famous segments in the Attitude Era. But and I would have been a trivia question for years. But I kind of made a face. I made a job face, made a boo-boo face, and they asked someone else to do it. So I think they ended up having one of their production guys do it. So
what could have been, huh?
What could have been? Who knows? Hey, we'll never know. Scorpio Sky was the guy who brought Daniel Bryan and Kane together. So who could be? Who knows? It could be. It could have been one of those things. Maybe AEW would have looked at me years later. Who knows?
Maybe. But, yeah, you never know. So let's talk a little bit before, I again, you've been so.
Yeah, I got like 2 more minutes because then I'll be home. So.
Okay. Well, then
sir.
How about we'll just leave it at this? This will be a good time to end it, but I want you to plug your upcoming events. Of course, we know on March 6th, you'll be with Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, but
yes.
Where can folks follow you today? Where can they see you tomorrow? Let's get the word out there.
Well, best way to follow me, social media, Facebook is kind of my thing. It's Facebook/Brutal Bob Evans, but if you go on Bob Evans, I'm the one with the check mark. And you'll see my face with the glasses and everything. It's pretty much what I look like. At Brutal Bob Evans on TikTok, Instagram, X, and then Real Brutal Bob Evans on YouTube because I couldn't get Brutal Bob Evans. And that's about it. And if you want to sign up to I'm starting a school group, SKOOL, and it's kind of a fun thing where we're community. I have a couple hundred people in there now, and I'm trying to build it up. It's prowrestlingclass.com. and that's you can go in there, and that's a fun thing we're working on right now. There's a few classes in there now. Going to put some more in there. A lot of it's free. In fact, most of it's free. So you can go in there and you can check it out. And if anybody wants to book me for seminar intensive, what we talked about earlier, feel free to contact me. Facebook's to contact me at any of those places, and I'm happy to.
And
Yeah,
and I'll make sure to include we'll include you're breaking up again. Yeah, I appreciate your time, Bob. Thank you so much. Best of luck with everything, and we'll include your socials in the video description so everyone can follow you from there, whether it be on the podcast or on YouTube or wherever they're watching it. We'll make sure that links are there for you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I feel like I learned a little bit today too, so this was a lot of fun for me, and I hope again, best of luck on everything that's coming to you, and I hope it all goes well for you.
You too, and I hope we see each other in Southern California the next time I'm there.
Absolutely, I'll give you a hot dog and a handshake.
Oh, great! Thanks, man. Take care.
All right, thanks. And yep. That was Brutal Bob, everybody. Again, great dude. Very fun conversation, and so generous with his time. Again, an hour and a half. I wasn't expecting that, so that's pretty cool. We'll be back later this afternoon with the Alliance guys live stream right here on YouTube and on Twitch and on TikTok. But until then, we'll see you at the matches. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.